It was once thought of as an impossible dream, an inconceivable concept. Now, it's the most feared jet of the new millennium. All but undetectable to radar, it is the ace card in modern aerial warfare, designed to strike before anyone knows it's coming. The top secret world of stealth, the F-117 Nighthawk, next on Modern Marvels.
Washington, March 19, 2003. At 7:12 Eastern Standard Time, President Bush issues an executive order.
Its duration is to apply decisive force.
Minutes later, 2 F-117 Nighthawks take to the pre-dawn sky. Their destination, Baghdad. Their target, a reinforced bunker believed to house Iraq's dictator and his henchmen. Undetected, the black jets pierce the most heavily defended airspace on Earth and prepare for a decapitation strike, one that could end a war even before it begins. This is stealth warfare. For as long as aircraft have been used in combat, efforts to make them invisible to the enemy have been ongoing. By the First World War, attempts to build stealth aircraft concentrated on the use of camouflage to make planes difficult to detect visually. By the Second World War, the development of camouflage paint has reached new levels of sophistication, but these traditional schemes can only delay visual detection. The invention of radar changes everything. By transmitting electromagnetic waves and observing the returning echoes, aircraft can now be spotted hundreds of miles away. To counter this, British engineers come up with chaff, narrow metallic strips that act as tiny reflectors. In the ensuing whiteout, enemy radar is confused. But it is not an entirely satisfactory solution. The enemy knows something is there, just not exactly where.
There were certainly efforts during World War II, with dropping all these little metal streamers to try to prevent people from using radar to see your airplane. So stealth has been tried since that period.
By the 1950s, the Soviets are developing a highly sophisticated and lethal defense network consisting of SAMs, radar-guided surface-to-air missiles. Once they lock onto a target, these missiles will not miss. The development of these weapons sends shockwaves around the world. To counter this threat, the U.S. begins to produce aircraft that can fly higher than the enemy's planes and missiles. Lockheed's U-2 is the first of this new breed.
The U-2 is an attempt to keep an airplane from being struck down by enemy fire, and we're looking at altitude being its primary defense against missile threats from the ground.
But in May 1960, disaster strikes. A U-2 flown by Francis Gary Powers over the Soviet Union is shot down by a SAM. Flying at high altitude is no longer sufficient. Lockheed adds speed to the equation. Flying at Mach 3 at 80,000 feet, the SR-71 Blackbird is untouchable. But the reconnaissance aircraft is still detectable to radar. Although no Blackbird is ever shot down, the Soviets come very close on more than one occasion. During the Vietnam War, anti-aircraft systems massively disrupt U.S. air operations.
We had a a tough time with their SA-2s and SA-3s, and we knew that they were developing much more sophisticated missiles. We knew that just conventional airplanes were not going to be able to survive in a high-dense, coordinated missile defense system.
In 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, the Israeli Air Force loses 109 strike aircraft in just 18 days. Extrapolating the Israeli loss ratio into a NATO Warsaw Pact scenario, U.S. strategists realize that NATO air forces would be no match for the Soviet missiles.
The Air Force were recognizing the fact that there was no practical way of penetrating the Soviet defenses with our existing air forces, period. And so there was a requirement for a radical change in the stealth capabilities of an airplane to penetrate.
For the aircraft industry, stealth represents a radical change in design, an engineering step too big to even contemplate.